Hello and welcome to the Designer Market Update. Today is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. So we're going to be zooming in yet again on Bitfarms, which had a news release today that I thought was quite remarkable. So I'm going to quote Mr. Ben Gagnon, the CEO of Bitfarms, as follows. We are pleased to announce the sale of our Paraguay operations to Hive Technologies, which is, of course, a competing, Bitcoin mining company, as we continue to streamline our operations and rebalance towards North America. Bitfarms will be reinvesting the capital from this sale towards its 1 gigawatt growth pipeline in the US for BTC and HPC AI infrastructure, which marks a significant milestone in our transition from an international Bitcoin miner to a North American energy and compute infrastructure company. Can you read between the lines to understand how significant that particular phrase happens to be in light of what we spoke about yesterday? We'll circle back to that in a moment. We remain fully committed to our current operations in Latin America with 3 sites totaling 144 megawatts that all benefit from long-term power contracts, competitive pricing, and geographical diversification. This shift towards US-based assets is in line with our strategy to diversify beyond Bitcoin mining and capitalize on the significant growth opportunities in HPC AI. What we continue to hope and believe will be significant growth opportunities, right? I'm paraphrasing here. Well, I'm not even paraphrasing. I'm just interjecting that, right? Because as we discussed yesterday, there's now a little bit of a wobble in the market as it relates to, hey, how much energy is going to be needed for HPC AI. And you know what? I think the dust is starting to settle, and I think there's a realization that plenty of power and plenty of data center infrastructure will continue to be needed. Okay, so under the terms of this binding letter of intent, or LOI, Hive Technologies will purchase from Bitfarms its 100% ownership stake in its Paraguay mining site. The proposed transaction values the completed site at approximately $85 million, inclusive of approximately $19 million of power deposits. With Andy, I guess that's the Paraguayan energy provider, and the assumption of remaining capital obligations. Okay, we're not going to get into too much minutia here, right? The big headline picture, though, is, okay, Bitfarms is divesting itself of its Paraguay operations, and the recipient of these Paraguay operations will be Hive Technologies. Hive, best of luck with this. I really hope that it does really well for you, and I mean that. So, in summary, Bitfarms is going to receive $25 million upon the closing of this transaction, $31 million over 6 months following the closing, and then $19 million as reimbursement for power deposits made to Andy by Bitfarms, and finally, approximately $10 million in remaining capital obligations. Okay, so what are the benefits of this to Bitfarms? Well, so from Bitfarms' perspective, this significantly reduces Bitfarms' anticipated 2025 capital requirements. Okay, that's good to hear. It rebalances Bitfarms' portfolio to about roughly 80% North America and 20% international by year-end 2025, when coupled with of course, the acquisition of Stronghold Digital Mining, which is expected to close in the next couple of months. Now, that phrase, the next couple of months, okay, so hopefully that means February and March, right? Because we really do want this to close sometime in Q1 2024, or I'm sorry, Q1 2025, and not see it get pushed, further away into this year. Okay, what's another benefit? Reduces estimated average power cost by around 10%. And then finally, it does not, this is important, does not impact miner deployment schedule. It does reduce, however, year-end 2025 megawatt capacity from 955 megawatts to 755. This, my friend, is a big deal. I think of myself as being somewhat reasonably decent at reading between the lines when I look at news releases. And so when I go back to that sentence, and I'm going to read it in its entirety, Bitfarms will be reinvesting the capital from this sale towards its 1 gigawatt growth pipeline in the US for BTC and HPC AI infrastructure, which marks a significant milestone in our transition, keyword there, our transition from an international Bitcoin miner to, and this is the real critical part here, to a North American energy and compute infrastructure company. It has often been said that the Bitcoin mining business is kind of crappy most of the time. There are times when owning a bunch of Bitcoin mining machines and mining for yourself can make a ton of sense, and it can be incredibly lucrative. But I think if you've been around the block, as I know many of us have been, right? I think we've observed, right, in real world practice, man, that hash prices can remain kind of flat for extended periods of time. You could get into these crypto, winters, which aren't very pleasant to have to try to survive through. And, repositioning oneself as a company from one where it's like, hey, we're just going to go into the market. We're going to raise a bunch of capital. We're going to compete against about a dozen plus other publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies to buy a bunch of Bitcoin mining machines. And by the way, we're also competing against people running miners in their basement and any other interested party who would like to buy a Bitcoin mining machine. But we're going to buy these Bitcoin mining machines. We're going to plug them in and we're going to try to make a profit doing so in an environment, right, where the network hash rate continues to go up. Hash prices remain flat to down sometimes, right? The price of Bitcoin doesn't always cooperate. You find yourself suddenly in an environment where, man, it's like, what kind of business is this? It's like a business that doesn't necessarily generate the kind of money you want it to generate on an ongoing basis to support operations. And so then you find yourself going into the capital markets, all the time to raise capital to further one's operations. And sometimes that could be accretive, but a lot of times it's a bit of a wash. So I'll tell you something. I am incredibly encouraged and incredibly intrigued by this phraseology. Bitfarms is becoming a North American energy and compute infrastructure company. Man, that sounds so much more viable to me. That's something I actually viscerally feel so much more excited about on so many levels than simply saying, we're going to buy Bitcoin mining machines, we're going to plug them in, and we're going to try to make bank doing so. And I'm not knocking that model per se, okay? That can work during very specific periods of time. We've seen it work, right? It's been, I think, a tried and true strategy for quite some time. But to be on the other side of that equation, where you're not simply going out into the market, having to try to find these, power contracts so you can plug in your machines at a data center and, you're buying all the machines. Instead, you're saying, hey, we want to be on the other side of that trade, right? We want to be the infrastructure company. We want to be an energy and compute infrastructure company. To me, that is really, really intriguing. Not only because I think it can be far more lucrative, right? But I think it's actually a more viable business strategy. Bitcoin mining isn't going to get any easier. I don't know anybody who would say, yeah, it's going to get easier in 4 years than it is today. And so, from that perspective, Bitcoin mining as we know it today, or what I always have liked to call it like transaction validation, it's something that's still going to exist. It's always going to exist to some degree, right? Of course, right? As long as presumably there are transactions to be validated on the Bitcoin blockchain, that it doesn't just become, collectible in its entirety, and rather it's something that's used for something, right? There are going to be transactions to be validated. And, the energy needs of the Bitcoin industry are huge today. The energy needs of the existing HPC AI industries in North America today are quite large. I don't know that yesterday's news regarding DeepSeek, and if you haven't watched yesterday's broadcast, I'll try to link to it in the description to today's broadcast. Get caught up with that. But I don't think that we're going to really see a diminishment in energy needs. I don't think we're going to see a diminishment in this appetite for data centers and for energy infrastructure in North America. So I like the way Bitfarms is positioning itself. And yeah, it's not reflected in the stock price, right? We all know that. But I do believe that once Bitfarms gets itself fully positioned and can actually come to market with, hey, we now have contracts, we've got customers, we've got partnerships, right? And here are the companies we're working with to fill our our compute infrastructure that we've developed and built. These are the partners that are going to be filling that infrastructure. and these are the contracts, and this is the money we're going to make, and it's a win-win situation. We win, they win, we all win, right? I think the stock, I mean, right, you tell me, right? But I've got to believe that the stock's going to re-rate in a very, very, very significant way. I love what I'm seeing. Bitfarms, keep it up. And Hive Technologies, congratulations. Best of luck with this. I hope the Paraguayan, operations do really, really, really well for you. And I truly mean that. Okay, my friend, let's stay positive. Let's be great. And we'll see each other again tomorrow.